Hello. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'd like to apologize for the delay, but apparently everything has been delayed from yesterday. Our minister was supposed to be joining you for this press conference, but unfortunately, because of the London fog, he could not make it. So welcome to all of you. But I'm very happy to introduce to you Dr. Taleb Rafai, UNWTO Secretary General, Ambassador Nasser Kamel, His Excellency the Egyptian Ambassador to the UK, and Professor Nicholas Reeves, one of the most renowned Egyptologists, and we're here today to listen to them. And if there's anything that has to do with the Egyptian tourism, I'll be more than happy to answer your questions. I know I can't fill my minister's position, but I'll do my best though. Thank you so much all for coming, and let's start our conference now. Thank you.
Dr. Rafai,
here or there? From here. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. A few minutes ago, I was on the phone with the minister from Egypt who was still at the airport trying to catch a plane. So he asked me also, in addition to what the wonderful lady just conveyed to you, to convey his apologies for him. He would have wanted to be here with you, but it's unusual circumstances, so he cannot make it in time. He will arrive later in the day. My task today is just to give you the international global perspective and connect that to Egypt in whichever way that may interest you. In many ways, Egypt is an example of resilience, strength, and very deep-rooted traditions in travel and tourism. Egypt has been tested so many times in its life, and it's always came on top. And it's due to the long experience that it has in dealing with difficult situations, but at the same time, it is due to the deep-rooted traditions and the wonderful industry that it has been able to build over the years. Let me share with you a few data so that will give you some illustration of where we're heading, and then I'll be more than happy to answer to some of your questions and or remarks that you may have. I will have to apologize to the ambassador and your good selves that I may have to leave a bit earlier, so if need be, we can just engage in question and answer after I'm done with my initial presentation. That would be highly appreciated. After 3 consecutive years of decline from 2011 to 2013, Egypt finally resumed its very clear trend of growth in 2014, and it's confirmed now in 2015. In 2014, Egypt grew at an average of 5% in arrivals, and more than that in its international receipts, which are even more important, the earnings, which was at a rate of growth of 19%. In the first few months of 2015 and up until September of 2015 now, there is an 8% growth in arrivals and 5% growth in receipts in 2015, and we expect this trend to continue by the end of this year. Tourism is a key industry in Egypt. It contributes so much to its economy, 11.5% of its GDP, 12.6% of employment and job opportunities, and 34% of its total exports. So no wonder why tourism is so important to Egypt. The President of Egypt, President Sisi, said if and when tourism to Egypt recovers, Egypt will recover, unquote. And he's absolutely correct about this. The capacity for growth and resilience in Egypt is remarkable. Egypt, however, has been faced with so many challenges, and it's dealing with them one by one. It will always be a very important and attractive destination. You will be listening later on from a very good professor here about some of the new discoveries, and everything in Egypt is going to be exciting because much of Egypt's story is still untold. And there are so many good stories that will continue to come out of Egypt, this land that is so rich with so many, many things. As I said, again, because of the record that Egypt has in dealing with difficult situations, it has earned a reputation of being a school that others would look up to when they face difficult times. Particularly the minister who has become a friend now, Minister Hisham Jazua, has earned the respect and credibility of many people around the world. His insistence, his resilience, his stubbornness, and his determination are remarkable. I've never seen a man that is so strong a fighter as he is. In his first mandate, before he became back again a minister in his second term now, he was traveling more like a foreign minister to many countries. Forgive me, Ambassador, for saying this. Meeting many, many foreign ministries all over the world and arguing with them on the logic and the wisdom of their travel advisories. And in many ways, in many times, in many instances, he succeeded in doing this. And I feel much more comfortable saying this in his absence than saying it in his presence. So there is a personal admiration that I have to this man and to what he represents, and his ability to fight for his country and for what he thinks is the good cause. This is what I wanted to say about the record of Egypt. What I want to also add is that there is a strong vision and ambitious strategy that we are working with the Egyptian government on at UNWTO. We're providing our technical assistance to the new strategy for Egypt. And I'd like to just give you a few indicators of what this strategy is aiming at. Today, Egypt is receiving about 10 million international visitors and earning about 10 billion US dollars in terms of earnings receipts. The new strategy aims to raise the 10 million international arrivals to 20 million, but it has an even more ambitious target of tripling its receipts to 30 billion instead of 10 billion, which is the wise strategy because it's based on low impact, high value, because they would want to even double the expenditure per tourist in the country by raising it from 10 billion to 30 billion. We're working on this, and it's also based on so many other very important principles of inclusive growth and joining the benefits with the local community. This is what I wanted to share with you on Egypt, and I'll be more than happy to respond to any of the questions that you have in your mind. I know that you may be very interested in very recent events and many of the questions that are still open. We're ready here. I'm sure I'll speak on the behalf of all of us here, including our good ambassador, who I also happen to know and respect and admire very much. We're very transparent. We're ready to answer any of your questions. At the UNWTO, the United Nations Specialized Agency for Tourism, Egypt is a very important member and has a very central position in our strategy and our vision. It's an example of what we would like countries to look at when it comes to actually being resilient and cherish and respect growth. I thank you all very much, and I stand ready to answer any of your questions. Thank you. I don't know how you want to do this. I may need to leave earlier, so I would appreciate it if with the permission of the ambassador and our good friend, if anyone has any questions to ask them now, and then maybe we will move on to, please. Yes, please. Do you want me to conduct this directly like this? I'm ready to do it. I'm used to it.
Hello, Hayley Platt from Reuters Television. I'd like to ask you what the latest information you have on the cause of the crash the weekend.
The information I have is the information that you would have, which is basically that we're all still waiting to see what are the conclusive results of the investigations. It is absolutely crucial to be responsible and wait to see what the results are. What I know is what you know, and you probably know more because you're more on top of the news, which I get, and I watch television and radio and listen to The Wire every day.
Okay. You just explained your big ambitious plans for the future to double the number of tourists to your country.
It's not my country.
Oh, sorry,
I wish it is.
Okay.
I wish it is.
How much of a setback are the events of the weekend to those plans?
We haven't seen any setbacks so far. Egypt has been facing very difficult situations in the past. We are still waiting to see what the conclusions are to this event. It's too soon to make any judgment or to measure any impacts at this point in time.
Okay. How can you reassure people that Egypt is safe?
I'm ready to take my family and go to Egypt tomorrow, if that's reassuring.
I think Mr. Ambassador would like to comment on that.
Yeah, no, please. No, please.
I can answer any other question.
Are we okay?
No, I have a whole load of questions.
Okay. There's a gentleman here. Yeah.
can you elaborate a little bit further how UNWTO is helping in the strategic plans for Egypt? You named the numbers. Can you give also the time frame in which time it is planned to double the number of tourists? And what concrete can your organization, which is worldwide and a lot of research and technical things, can do to support Egypt?
Let me answer the specific questions first of all. The plan is for 2020. It's a very ambitious plan, yet it's a doable plan. The way we are helping Egypt is by actually drafting the strategy with them. It is done locally. It's not done by us, but we are with them. We're part of their team. We review their outputs. We review their reports, and we direct them in whichever way. UNWTO is a specialized agency for travel and tourism, and it's a reservoir of knowledge and know-how. It has a tremendous amount of experts and consultants and advisors all over the world, and we'll put that to the help and the support of Egypt. But we're also, our main objective is not just to draft a good strategy, is to make sure that this strategy is consistent with what we stand for, which is sustainable growth and sustainable and responsible plans and strategies that are observing all the three pillars of sustainability: environmental sustainability, social and economic sustainability. We want to ensure that the benefits of tourism are spread to all the population. And that's very, very important. We want to make sure that the growth and the basis of the strategy are also very respectful of the environment and of all the other social norms that govern the Egyptian society. That's our role in helping Egypt in developing its strategy. And we hope to be able to do that by the mid of next year to conclude our strategy, I hope. Thank you.
Hi. Hello. Oh,
where are we? Yes.
Here. Thank you.
Yes.
Ben Flanagan from the national newspaper in Abu Dhabi. Since the Islamist President Morsi was ousted, Egypt has received billions of dollars in funding and other support from the Gulf nations, including the UAE. As part of this tourism drive, do you expect to seek or have been pledged any additional funds from the Gulf states?
Let me just make sure that the prelude to your question is your question, not anything that I would be in line with the way you described the introduction to your question. And the second point is, yes, I do. I do expect support to Egypt and the people of Egypt. And I think not just from the Gulf, from many other countries around the world, from many other sources around the world, there will be support to Egyptian government and the Egyptian people.
Can you give us any specifics on that? Regarding
I'm not informed about any specifics of that. Maybe our good ambassador could be more helpful in that regard. I'm only speaking on the tourism part, and that's the area that I would be more comfortable in addressing the questions.
Okay, Ambassador, do you have any?
As much as I do fully agree with our dear friend on the qualification you just used in the beginning of your question, which I don't agree with. On the second part of the question, Egypt is not a country seeking assistance as we speak. Egypt is a country in quest of economic cooperation, of encouraging people to invest. And of course, we have a great deal of business to do with international financial institutions, the World Bank, African Development Bank, and lately Egypt has become a country of operation at EBRD. These are our natural partner with which we are cooperating very closely. So Egypt is not an assistance-seeking country, but of course we are in the business of expanding the Egyptian economy and cooperating with all our partners to achieve that.
One last point regarding the tourism arrivals. I mean, you know, this awful event with the plane crash is one thing, but another incident was the group of Mexican tourists who were killed in the desert by the army mistakenly. Have you seen any fallout from that incident in terms of the tourist numbers, and is this 8% figure really achievable with such a tragedy in having happened?
Let me give you a very small indication of what's happening when it comes to the UK market in specific terms. The UK market has increased by 9% since January this year. So what we're witnessing in the UK and witnessing all over our traditional markets is an increase of the number of arrivals this year. So Egypt is seeing a full recovery of its tourist sector, and that's what led the minister, in cooperation, of course, with the World Tourism Organization, to be ambitious enough and hope for Egypt to achieve 20 million tourists by 2020. And that is actually quite realistic, because Egypt in 2010 was around 13 to 14 million. So what we're really seeking is 5 million more than we were able to absorb and deal with in 2010. So the sector is recovering nicely and gently, going back to its previous numbers and seeking to expand that in a very reasonable, realistic way.
To Mr. Rafai, can you please elaborate as a UNWTO expert on what strategies or tactics a country can take to make that low-impact, high-value relationship, doubling the numbers of people but tripling the receipts?
There is no one recipe fit all, but I can review with you a few principles. It's very important to be absolutely careful about your environmental impact and environmental assessment in any product development that you do. And unless you have a plan that measures exactly what kind of impact on the environment that any new tourism product or development has, then we'll be missing the point. We've developed in UNWTO something called the Tourism Development Sustainability Observatories, which are setups that are connected to universities that measure exactly the relationship between the increase in the growth in numbers and the impact on the environment and the other fauna and flora and all of the other things. Another very important element in this high-value, low-impact thing is the economic and social impact. We need to make sure that there is enough number of jobs that are given to Egyptians, that there is enough money that stays in the country. When we talk about $10 billion in tourism receipts, how much of this is staying in the country and how much leaks outside of the country? All of this must be measured, and all of this must be managed in such a way to increase the sustainability of the economic impact of tourism on the ground. We have very clear principles, but as I said, the strategies and the tactics and the approaches for each country can be different because the context is different from one place to another. But we have a vast number of experiences, and we could draw on these experiences and correlations and advise the Egyptian government and the Egyptian authorities and the private sector as well, which is a very important component here. And I must say something in this regard, that the relationship between public and private sector in Egypt is an example of how the two sectors are cooperating in a very, very exemplary manner. And I must take this opportunity to put on record to say that the private sector in Egypt has been the actual hard rock where the resilience of Egyptian tourism has been always based themselves on.
Can I ask you, what changes are holidaymakers going to see in the resorts this coming winter to ensure their safety, particularly in the light of the attack in Tunisia that killed so many UK holidaymakers? Thank you.
Can I?
Please.
Let's start by saying that even before the attack in Tunisia, the unfortunate attack in Tunisia, the Egyptian tourist destination has been highly secured. And when I say highly secured, it's not just a general statement. We are doing that in conjunction, in cooperation with our major destination, meaning, and I'll give you the example of the UK. The UK sends regularly mission to Egypt to advise, but also observe on what are the measures applied to Egypt. even in relation to this tragic incident, if you read the international press, everybody would be saying that Sharm el-Sheikh is one of the safest airports to fly to or from today. And I can tell you why, in terms of technical steps. This is one of the very few airports where you have 3 different points of thorough checking when it comes to luggage. So, in conjunction with our partner, we have an extensive plans for our major airports and major tourist destinations. And that has helped those destinations remain secure and will remain secure in the future for tourists from all over the world. So additional measures, if needed, will definitely be applied. But for the time being, we are applying the highest international standards when it comes to airport safety and tourist destination safety, including the hotels in those areas.
So can I just ask one more question? Does that mean then that tourists can go to the Red Sea resorts and enjoy their holidays rather than kind of, worry or be put off that there might be loads of security around?
Well, I think CCTV are all over the city and have not spoiled people spending their vacation. Sharm el-Sheikh is one of the highest city or highest tourist destination in terms of CCTV camera. Having metal detector in all Egyptian hotels will not spoil your vacation in any way or mean. I would even argue that those tourists, when they say those security measures being applied, they feel much safer and they would return the next year. And what we are witnessing in Egypt in the last 2 or 3 years is that we have lots of repeaters. I don't know how you call them in the industry.
Repeat visitors.
Huh?
Repeat visitors.
Repeat visit, which means Egypt is now becoming their yearly vacation spot because 1, they have fun, 2, they feel secure.
May I just add 2 very important points here? One is that this is not a problem for Egypt only. It's a problem for every destination all over the world now. No exceptions whatsoever. There is no country under the sun now that's immune from security measures that must be implemented. But the second important thing, as the ambassador just said, is that we need to observe the principle of safe and friendly. Safe and pleasant. Safety without being friendly ends up killing the very industry you're trying to protect. And being friendly without being safe and being careful about your safety measures also defeats the purpose altogether. So this is a challenge. And there are technological ways, there are management tools, and every country under the sun is implementing them, not just Egypt.
Unfortunately, yes.
I have to apologize, if you don't mind, Ambassador, and leave you under the beautiful sun of Egypt here.
I don't think I have anything to add to the beautiful introduction made by Mr. Rafai, except to announce, and I'm sure you did, that Egypt, except to announce that Egypt, the Egypt Tourism Authority is launching its first new global marketing campaign, and this is really the first global marketing campaign in more than 4 years. Well, it comes at a time when the sector is recovering for Egypt, so we have decided to launch this campaign, and actually Monday would be the launching date for the UK market. So when you wake up on Monday you will see taxis, buses, boards with the brand of Egypt. This year brand would be This is Egypt. We're using the normal Egyptian, the average Egyptian who will be inviting you to visit Egypt, and also will be also using some of our visitors, because we have received in the last few weeks very high-profile actors and international stars who have been to Egypt to enjoy the sun of Egypt and to enjoy our country. So we'll be also using them in that campaign. So you will be seeing international stars and normal Egyptian of all walks of life asking you to visit that country. I will just continue, or just fill the gaps when it comes to the UK market, because Umayma just told me. I said 9%. Maybe this was not as accurate as it should be. What the reality is that from January to September, we have had an 8.1% increase, but in numbers of tourists to Egypt. But we've had 10.05 or 10.5% in number of nights. So if we put the two together, we'll come up with 9% increase in total entry into the Egyptian market. That's really what I wanted to add in terms of campaigns. Coming back to what you raised, because you said you had 10 questions, and Mr. Rafai, rightly so, he said all he knows is what you know already. The only point I would like to add is that Egypt's attitude towards this whole tragic incident, of course, beside our feeling of sorrow for the families of the lost ones, was total transparency. As we speak, there is teams from Egypt, Russia, and France being the country where Airbus have produced that plane, and also Germany, because the plane was apparently designed in Germany. So total transparency is the name of the game until we find out the reason behind this fatal, tragic incident. Of course, I can speak for 20 minutes, give you my arguments that will point out to a scenario that have or will have no effect whatsoever in relation to tourism to Egypt, but I would rather not speculate, even if I do believe in a certain scenario, and leave it to this thorough investigation to reveal. So what I encourage the media is not to get into this game of speculation. I see that every single word that is being said for or against any of those scenarios has been amplified by 1,000%. I've worked in the media, I understand, and wait for the final verdict, which should be very clear, because we have the black boxes recovered, and we have this panel of 4 countries working on the case. And as I said, Egypt has nothing to hide. The whole incident is investigated by the proper authority in the proper countries involved, either with the plane or the company that owned that plane, meaning Russia, of course. Thank you very much.
And now we'd like to invite Dr. Nicholas Reeves to start his talk. Please, Dr. Reeves. And he's just getting his daughter wed. Actually, he had to leave his in-laws yesterday and come specifically for us from out of London too. Thank you very much, Dr. Reeves.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you can all hear me. Time is short, but I wanted to talk about something extremely positive about Egypt and Egyptology, and the possibility that that we may have discovered a new tomb in the Valley of the Kings. We have come up with the theory. We found evidence to suggest that the Tomb of Tutankhamun is in fact a much bigger tomb than was previously thought, and all the evidence at the moment points to this tomb being the tomb of Nefertiti, who is, of course, to do more than just... I'll flip through. Okay. This is the evidence. This is the burial chamber of the Tomb of Tutankhamun, and you'll see at the top we have the painted decoration, and below we have unique surface scans which have just been made of the burial chamber walls, which reveal quite new evidence which no one has ever seen before. That evidence is seen here on the west wall and the north wall. We don't have any evidence of anything interesting on the south and east walls, but the west and north walls are very intriguing. And you'll see I have numbered the features here 1, 2, 3, and 4. Features 2, 3, and 4 seem to outline the existence of a new doorway. And you'll see that we have a natural fault. Actually, this isn't working. Number 3 is a natural fault coming down, and numbers 2 and 4 represent a doorway. Seem to represent a doorway going forward. Very similar to this, where you've got the natural fault coming down from the ceiling and a doorway underneath. And this is, I think, what we've got outlined in red. Now, when I first saw this feature, I was very suspicious. Of course, you don't go finding new chambers in tombs as famous as Tutankhamun's tomb every day. And so I was a little skeptical. However, I did the measurements of this doorway, and I found that the measurements tallied precisely with the measurements of another doorway, an adjacent doorway in the Tomb of Tutankhamun, the annex. So the evidence is that this is an extra chamber. It's sealed. It's not been disturbed since antiquity. It's covered by the painting, so we know it is completely intact. And it seems to be another Tutankhamun period storeroom. That, at least, is the theory. And it's the missing storeroom that you can see here, marked with a single asterisk. And this is what I think we have. Now, the more interesting wall is the painted north wall. And here we have, you can see the surface details. Now, numbers 2 and 3, you will see, are extremely straight, fine, clear verticals. And just above number 2, you will see there's a strange dog's leg type crack. This seems to be evidence of, on the left is solid stone. On the right, it seems to be a partition wall. And this crack that you see is evidence of slumping within that wall. You see where it says diagonal fissure, that is exactly what you get in modern settlement cracks in partition walls. So we're fairly encouraged to think that this is a partition hidden behind the paintings that leads to another, which is an extension of the tomb of Tutankhamun, a corridor beyond this north wall. We just flip through here. And I think what we faced with is, from this we can work out that the original plan of the tomb of Tutankhamun, which is a bit higgledy-piggledy at the moment from an Egyptological point of view, it seems to have been a right-turning corridor tomb. And a right-turning corridor tomb is a tomb specifically used by queens during the 18th dynasty. Okay, this is what I think we can see in the north wall. We have a partition, and within that partition we have a service, what I've termed a service doorway. So it's a very strange construction, but it's supported by the features of 4, 5, and 6, and by 2 and 3. What convinces me that this is exactly what we're faced with is the fact that Carter, in 1923, pulled down a similar wall, which was separating the antechamber from the burial chamber. An exactly similar situation with a partition wall pierced by a central service doorway. And we were looking at this in the Valley of the Kings, and the Minister of Antiquities, Dr. El-Damaty, added his own contribution to this particular theory, in that he noticed that the surface of the north wall, there are two very different finishes. Where I think there is the partition, it's a very soft, rounded surface. Where I think there's a service doorway, there is a much more coarse, gritty type of finish, which is identical to the finish that Howard Carter found on the blockings within the Tomb of Tutankhamun in the 1920s. So here again, we think this is good evidence that this might be hidden behind this painting. There might be another entrance. Let me move forward. So essentially what we're thinking at the moment is that the Tomb of Tutankhamun is in fact a tomb within a tomb. That this tomb was not originally made for Tutankhamun, it was made for a queen, and that Tutankhamun was simply buried in the outer portions of this tomb, the adapted outer portions of this tomb. And this was supported, this view is supported by work that's been done in the Getty Museum, which suggests that the north wall is in fact older than the other walls in the burial chamber and represents the blocking of the entrance to this queen's chamber. Now, who is this queen? Well, what's interesting is that, as I said, the north wall looks older than the other walls in the burial chamber. It is, in fact, older, demonstrably older, because the proportions employed in this wall are those of the Amarna period, whereas the proportions employed in the in the south, east, and west walls are those of the post-Amarna period. So we seem to have something that looks like it might be the burial of a queen, and a burial of a queen of using proportions of the Amarna period. Now, the person that comes to mind, of course, is Queen Nefertiti. And if we start looking closely at the details of that north wall, we see that there are several features in that painting which are very distinct. For example, the image of the pharaoh whose funeral this is shown with a very distinctive line at the corner of the mouth, which picks up on representations of Nefertiti in her later days. But what clinches it, I think, is if you look at the image of the king who is shown officiating at the funeral of this king. Now, at the moment, the officiating king is labelled as I, officiating at the funeral of Tutankhamun. But if you if you look closely at the features of this king, you see that it has the features of Tutankhamun. So I think what we have is the young king Tutankhamun officiating at the burial of Queen Nefertiti, who I believe is still hidden behind. So this is the kind of arrangement I think we've got. And we plan to investigate this. I'm working with the Minister of Antiquities, Dr. El-Damaty, and we are planning to do a radar test of the tomb to see whether there are any voids behind the existing walls in Tutankhamun's tomb. This is a radar test that my team did in 2000, and when we discovered the whereabouts of tomb KV63 in the Valley of the Kings. And the other technique we're going to use is thermography, which will show if there are any older inscriptions underneath the present painting on the north wall. Because if my theory is correct, then we should have inscriptions which relate to Nefertiti rather than to Tutankhamun. And I think thermography will reveal that, as you'll see from these images here of a medieval painting. But thermography also reveals when there have been closed-up doorways. So if we are faced with a situation where we've got a doorway that's been blocked up, then, as you'll see from this slide, we should be able to detect that with thermal imaging. So, I think this is one of the positive stories of Egypt at the moment, and I hope it will become much more positive if the theorizing turns out to be true. And if we can turn up the tomb of Nefertiti, then this will, and it looks as though if there is something behind this wall, then it is intact. It's not been disturbed at all. Then I think this will be, if we're lucky, it will be a discovery that rivals the discovery of the Tomb of Tutankhamun in 1922. And the Tomb of Tutankhamun, of course, is not only one of Egypt's great discoveries, it's actually the greatest archaeological discovery that's ever been made anywhere in the world. And I think potentially we're faced with something similar now. I think we may be on the verge of something quite special. So, apologies for gabbling. I hope you managed to catch some of that. Thank you so much indeed.